It's a new week, and we know what that means. It's time for a new colorway. Well, maybe not a brand new colorway. Maybe we bring a favorite back from the past. Now, in a past video, I talked about this colorway, and it was requested at that time to bring it back, and I wholeheartedly agree. This is a beautiful colorway. I know I say that about all the colorways, but you know what I mean. Another stunner, for sure. Here we have Geology Rocks. So, this colorway, full of jewel tones, absolutely stunning colorway. It kind of moves from like an emerald to, no, I wouldn't say a ruby red. It's more of a rusty brownish red. In either case, we got our yarn in the pot. We got it all laid out here. We are working with fingering weight today, one of my favorites in the dye pots. There's a lot of yarn here to take and work with, and I find that the fingering weight really just shows that variation quite nicely. So that's what we're going to work with. This is a low immersion version. So we don't have very much soak in the pots. It's probably about half a cup per pot, just enough to get that dye rolling, not too much. We really want this dye to hit and stick. We don't want it to go too far at all. It's also why we're doing the ridges in the middle, or like I like to call it, puffing up the middle. We just kind of raise that center up a little bit, allows us to put some colors on the outside, and then our color in the inside, in the center, does not, basically it get encroached by the other two colors. So across the top, we are going with this wonderful blue, kind of a teal. It fades off into a turquoise. Lots of darkness to it, but it really plays quite well as it goes down into the yarn. It kind of lightens up, and you get this wonderful fade of blues without having to use too much dye. So we can get that nice darkness on the top, and then as it goes down deeper, it kind of fades out into the lighter stuff. Across the bottom, we're going to go with a purple, of course. When we're talking jewel tones, that's just the direction you go. So we got this wonderful purple. It's kind of like a plum, but it's quite a bit lighter. And we got the same effect going on here. So we've got nice saturation at the bottom, and then we kind of let it fade off into the top, into the center. So we're getting some fading out into just almost like a pink or something like that. Now, into the center here, we are working with more of, it's not really coming through in this video, but this is more of a brown than anything else. It kind of fades off into the yellow side of things. And when yellow fades off, mixes with your blues, you're going to get just the tiniest hint of green. Now, this is a little bit darker on this side, but you're going to see that kind of pan out on the back side of this yarn. So now that the dye's in there, we're going to get our fingers in there. We're going to get them dirty. We want to push that dye down to make sure we get as much saturation as deep into the colorway as we possibly can. And unfortunately, with unnatural light, we do kind of get, basically what I'm seeing here on my screen at least, is that the colors aren't coming through as true as you could possibly see, unfortunately. But a little bit later, we're going to get them into the light box, which is going to use a 5,000 degree Kelvin light, which is as close to natural light as we can get, while keeping the light source consistent. So we've got our fingers in there. We got this dye pushed down. Now, I've mentioned this in the past. We want to make sure that that dye goes at least 51%. It could be a little bit more. You definitely don't want less, because what you're going to see is as the hank is wrapped up, it kind of wraps up into a circle, but the inside of that hank might be the start of the hank, and the outside of that hank might be the outside of the hank. So long story short, if you don't get that saturation going at least halfway through, you can see some fading across the skein, and we'll cake up the yarn a little bit later so that you can really see the difference there. Now, we did cook this off, not for too long. I know we're working with a little bit more saturation than some other colorways, but we only cooked this off for about 10 minutes on the front side, so not too bad at all. You could definitely extend that out to the 15-minute mark without having too many issues. Especially when you're working with these dye pans. You don't want it boiling, but you definitely want it cooked off. You want it hot. And as we're lifting these skeins, that's kind of how you tell, how long you really need to cook it off. You don't want to see any bleeding in any way, shape, or form in the water that's underneath. You can see it's all nice and clear as it drips out. That dye has set into the front side of these skeins. So, got a little tangle there. That's all right. We got her. Yeah, nice and clear all the way across, and that's what you're looking for. So If it was me, if it was a brand new colorway, on the safe side of things, I would leave it a little bit longer and then just start shortening it up and checking your skeins as you're going. There's nothing wrong with, you know, picking it up a little bit, seeing if you got some bleeding on the backside, you know, a little bit of dye sticking in the pots, and then just closing it back up and letting it sit for another few minutes. So cooking it off, everything looks great here. We got nice saturation, everything's penetrated, beautiful. So on the backside, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to kind of puff up the middle, make sure that everything's set. We're not going to puff it up too much. We do want that dye to run a little bit, and that's going to give us actually a little bit of play between the colors. So we have basically, we're going to run a blue across the top. We're going to run a brown across the middle. It's kind of a reddish brown, but it bleeds off a little bit of yellow, and that yellow likes to play with the blues, which will actually give us a green. So we're going with a turquoise across the top, kind of a sea breeze, if you will. We've seen this color in several other colorways, including Stormy Seas. I love this blue. I really do. And normally when I use this blue, I like to kind of pair it up with some sprinkles, but we're not going sprinkles on this one. We're just doing a straight dye job on this one. Across the bottom, we're going to go with that same purple on the front side. We did lighten it up just the tiniest little bit. We really want that pink to come through here. So we're throwing it at the bottom of the pot, and then we're allowing that dye to exhaust up through the yarn. Yes, you're going to get a little bit of white, but that's intentional. We really want this pink to come through here, and that's going to give us a lot of play. So now we got this rusty brown, kind of a reddy brown, and you can see as it mixes in, when you mix with the purple, you get kind of a darker brown, reddish brown. And then when it mixes in with the blue, you're getting those greens coming through. So we just want a hint of green. We don't really want it to take over the entire pot, but we do want those colors to mix. So that's why we did it this way. Normally, if we're doing a darker color, we would kind of do a valley or something like that to try and stop that dye from moving too far. But we really wanted to play into the blues here, and just gives you a little bit more depth. And when I get asked for advice, I tell people, generally, just go play. Just play with colors, play with the yarn, play with how they interact with each other, and get a good idea of how your dyes really work together. Knowing how they exhaust, how those colors are going to take and bleed out into the other colors, and what kind of interactions we're going to get there, it really just brings a lot of depth to a colorway. And, you know, it spices it up without having to add any extra spice. So again, on the backside here, we're getting our fingers in there. We're making sure we're pushing that dye down, kind of give it a shake, make sure it gets nice and deep, and then we're going to cook it off. Now, usually for a final cook-off, I like to take and give it about 15 minutes. I really want to make sure that that color is set, it's firm, and we're not going to have any bleeding out that we don't want, because that never ends well. Over into the swatch machine. Now, we've got our new swatch machine here. It does run a little bit slower. But I'm actually quite impressed with it. I've used it several times over the last week just to pull some swatches together for some older colors. I think my favorite part about this is I don't have to be standing there. I know it takes a little bit longer. I like to be in the same room just to keep an eye on it, but I don't physically have to be standing at the machine the entire time. I can just kind of let it run, keep an eye on it, make sure there's no tangles or anything like that. And we're going to speed it up here. This is actually 1500%. So we're running 15 times faster than normal, faster than just standard, I guess you could say. Standard time. Every second is 15 seconds. So it's really running quite quick. And look at that swatch. It's got the perfect tension across the entire thing. This is the highest speed that it will go. There is a slower speed, but I really like this thing. I don't think I'm ever going to go back to a drill. I think it's saving my machine. It's going to last a whole lot longer with this thing running instead of me moving it mock chicken with the drill. That's for sure. So we're going to pop this off here real quick. Take a look at it. I love this, how this color really plays with itself. You get lots of colors going across the skein. Lots of variegation, and we kind of got that you see that bluish green, that teal coming through, that emerald color, I guess you will. Little bit of greens, and you're getting those pinks and those purples. I really only put 3 or 4 colors into the pots, and look at the variegation that really comes through. So allowing those colors to get in there and play with each other, really just kind of spices it up and makes it absolutely beautiful. It does. Time to cake it up. Now, I always cake up new colorways, even if nobody's asked for me to cake them. I like to cake them so that I can see how the saturation plays across the entire hank, and it gives me a good idea whether or not I need to increase some saturation or move some colors, just to try and make sure that we're getting nice saturation through the entire hank, therefore the entire cake. And as it's linear, let it run just a little bit long there, but that's okay. We're going to just twist this up. Looks like we didn't get caught up too bad. As the hank is linear, start to finish, we can really see it across the skein, start to finish, and it gives us a good timeline of what's going on in there. So everything looks great here. We're going to get it over into the light box and take a closer look. Yeah, beautiful. All right. Getting in nice and close here, we can see the saturation in the center of the cake, as well as the outside of the cake is wonderful. It's perfect. We can see on the edges how those colors are playing with each other, how they're interacting. Same as a swatch, yes, I know, but this really gives me a good idea of how this entire skein is going to take and play out. So absolutely love the caker. I love being able to see the end result in a cake rather than just looking at hank form. It gives me a good idea of what's going on. And what's going on is beauty. Now it's time for the pairings. That's right. So we're going to go with a fade here. We're going to start with Geology Rocks. And I'm actually, for whatever reason, I'm a little particular on how my fades look. So I'm going to throw this on the right-hand side, and we're just going to kind of push everything over, dropping them on the left. So up next, we have Book Club. Now, this red that's in here, it's not really a red. It's kind of a reddish brown. That I find really plays well with Geology Rocks because it's got that same reddish brown in there. And it kind of pulls us a little bit more over to the blue side of things, which pairs up really, really nice with some peace and quiet. Right here. This is probably one of my favorite colorways. It really is. We got those pinks, those yellows, those blues. Kind of fades off into an orangey peach, and it really just, it's so beautiful, especially with those speckles. I love some peace and quiet. Up beside that, we have Vitamin C. We got those same kind of speckles in here. These are more of a pink speckle rather than a purple speckle. But we've got a little bit lighter blue, a little bit lighter peach, a little bit lighter pink. So we're moving over into the lighter side of things. And just look at it. Like those two right there, some peace and quiet, Vitamin C, they were made for each other. They really were. Not intentionally, but it was a happy accident, for sure. All right. And finally, up beside that, we're going to go with I Don't Believe in Humans. That's right. Nice light pink, nice light blue, moving over into the tiniest amount of peach and some white. This is the lightest colorway I have on the shelves, with the exception of Ecru Undyed. Just looking, especially at those three on the on the left-hand side, those pair so very well together. Book Club kind of pulls all of that together and pushes it more towards the Geology Rock side of things. And yeah, it's a very happy pairing. I'm quite impressed. So lastly, we have the semi-solid. Now, this here, I don't have this exact purple. So if you can't match, I find it's best to contrast. So here we're going to go with Antique Rose. This is one of the newer semi-solids that we have, and I'm finding it's pairing with just about everything. Like I'm pulling this off the shelves constantly to go with just about everything. Now, I don't have the darker purple, but as that purple kind of fades off into a pink, we get Antique Rose, and I really think this one plays quite well in there. Up beside that, we have Neptune's Wake. This is also one of the newer semi-solids that we put out a few weeks back. Now, this kind of plays into the blue. So although it's not like a dark midnight blue, I found that Antique Rose, Neptune's Wake, they play really, really well together. And with Geology Rocks in the center, it really pulls it together. Up beside that, we have Wine Time. Now, I find this plays more into the brown side of things on the bottom, and it would pair up really, really nice with Neptune's Wake or Antique Rose, depending on, do you want to push it to the blue side of things? Do you want to push it to the pink side of things? Those three right there would definitely be my go-tos. And if you're looking for a bit of a contrast, dark brown. yeah, dark brown really plays into this quite well. Although it's not moving into those vibrant jewel tones, you know, you pair it up with Wine Time, and it's just, it gives it a different vibe. A little bit more sophisticated, if you will. A little less playful. But in either case, all of these colorways go with this one really, really well. As always, we have a swatch available. If it's not part of the inspiration photo, it is the last photo on every single listing. There it is. Beautiful swatch. I love how those colors play with each other. I really do. And of course, the big reveal. Geology Rocks. Absolute stunning gem of a colorway. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you again next time.